And welcome back to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor at whiskeypolitics.net. You can find us at America's Voice News. You can subscribe and hit the notification bell on YouTube. Just look for Whiskey Politics. And you could hear us at the Ricochet Audio Network and all of your favorite podcast applications, including iTunes. This has just been a crazy few days here. If you've been watching the news, watching the media, and kind of to hash it all out and put it back together again, I'm delighted to have returning to us Megan Barth. Megan, how are you?
Dave, I'm doing great. Great to see you.
Thank you for joining us. You are the co-chair of Red Wave America PAC, and you're also the purveyor of ReaganBabe.com. Is that right?
That's right.
Great. So, watching the football game yesterday, a couple of football games with my boys yesterday, and I kept getting pings on my phone. I've got a really good friend up in northern Nevada, near Reno, and he was sharing some information with me that I could not find anywhere on the media about, and correct me if I'm wrong here, an illegal alien about 3 doors down from where he lives went in and execution style shot 2 elderly people in the head, an 81 and an 80-year-old person. I think Jerry and Sherry David were their names, and apparently he did this 2 other times earlier in the week. What's going on, and why is the media not talking about this?
Well, as you know, Dave, I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm on the radio here in Southern Nevada quite a bit. And today actually was my first day to premiere my own show in Northern Nevada, and that's where these killings took place. And so since last week, when this murder spree started, it started last Thursday, I believe, January 9th or 10th. That's when the first killing took place, and her name was Connie Kuntz. She was found shot to death in her home. She took care of her elderly mother, who was disabled and deaf, and so her mother had discovered her when her mother woke up in the morning. This following day, an illegal 19-year-old illegal alien again went on a murder spree, shot another woman, execution style, 71 or 74-year-old Sophia Rinkin was found dead in her home with a bullet to the head. And then just a few days later, on January 16th, this illegal alien 19-year-old suspect, who is now in custody in Washoe County in Carson City, he took the 2 lives of an elderly couple, very popular, well-known couple. The husband was head of the Reno Rodeo, president of the Reno Rodeo for years. One thing that I think people need to understand about Northern Nevada is it's very similar. Nevada as a state is very similar in topography as California. Our southern Nevada is what I would consider more cosmopolitan, is more demographically diverse, it's more densely populated. And then as you move north out of Clark County, really, it gets very rural. And so when you go up towards Reno or Carson City, where our capital is, you have a lot of ag business, a lot of agriculture, a lot of ranches, a lot of, just kind of small town communities. Reno is referred to as the biggest little city. That's their moniker.
Right.
And the reason being is because it's such a tight-knit community. Ranchers, horse people, etc., tend to just kind of watch out for one another. I had the opportunity to interview 2 sheriffs today, the sheriff of Douglas County as well as the sheriff of Carson City. And they had not had any murders, specifically in the Gardnerville area of Washoe County, which is very rural, in 2 years. And prior to that, they simply had 1 murder. So to have 4 murders in a short time period of just 4 days really rocked the Northern Nevada, but it's rocked this state because, again, we have another story that an illegal alien who had no right to be here, who broke our laws when he illegally entered our country. He is from El Salvador, 19-year-old boy, went on a murdering rampage as well as burglarizing these homes. And according to the sheriffs, the property that was found on him, and perhaps even at a pawn shop, and also the electronic equipment that he stole, led to his arrest.
So I understand a couple of things. Number one, Washoe County, that's correct? That's the name of the county? That's now a sanctuary county, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. and this man was casing homes. And this, again, has been just reported in the media here, so tell me if I'm wrong. He was casing homes specifically of Caucasian white people looking for things to steal. Is that what I understand correctly, or is that...
That might be secondhand information or information that certainly didn't come across from the sheriffs that I spoke to today. And I had no less than 2 hours. I probably had 24 phone calls from concerned citizens all over Douglas and Washoe County. Those are northern counties. And you are correct. I actually learned today that Washoe County, much to my surprise, is a sanctuary county, and that was enacted by a Democrat mayor. There's not much sanctuary for American citizens, are there, in sanctuary cities? Counties. It seems like the only people given sanctuary in these sanctuary states or counties are the illegal alien criminals that hide, as the Democrats say, in the shadows.
And Nevada has been changing. Last time you came on the show, we talked about this. We talked about some of the issues with voter irregularities in Clark County, down where you live in southern Nevada. But Nevada itself is now, technically, it's a blue state. It's changed. So you're seeing these laws that are being implemented like they are in California. Is there a pushback at all? Are you hearing anything from, I mean, on your radio show, what are you hearing from listeners?
Listeners are outraged. They feel as if their vote was robbed, but they've also been watching the migration, and I don't mean illegal migration, the migration of Californians who are leaving their homes behind instead and choosing Nevada, because as you know, there's a mass exodus out of California. And unfortunately, Californians are bringing their politics, their progressive politics with them, and then voting in the same type of candidates and laws that they're escaping from. And so what you're seeing is that Nevada is turning purple. It actually turned blue. Donald Trump only lost this state by 27,000 votes. But most of the votes come out of Clark County. And so again, with that topography, as I was referring to, when you go up into Northern California, you have a lot of ag, a lot of red country, a lot of Republican country. But where the demographics are and where the vote is really grabbed is in those densely populated blue communities, in Nevada, of course, being Clark County. There's a lot of powerful unions, obviously, in Clark County that really focus on voter registration and getting out the vote. And so on top of not only the power structure that the Democrats have in the unions, the migration from California, but Nevada also has a quite substantial illegal alien population. And, you know, here's kind of how the fraud works, Dave. As you and I both know, I'm a former Californian. I escaped to Nevada. They first say, well, we must give driver's licenses to illegal aliens. Well, why? First of all, it's a privilege to drive, and secondly, it's a privilege to be an American.
Right.
It's already broken our laws. They have no respect for our laws. So the Democrats always say, well, you know, because of insurance costs, you know, we want to make sure they're insured. Oh, yeah, right. So now they've gotten into the DMV system, right, as illegal aliens. Well, then the second step to that fraud, of course, then comes along the lines of, well, now we're just going to have automatic voter registration at the DMV. And that's exactly what Nevada just did. They gave driver's licenses to illegal aliens, and then a ballot initiative called Question 5 here just passed in November, doing automatic registration at the DMV, and no one's told me, even the Secretary of State, how they're going to differentiate a legal citizen and a legal alien from an American citizen.
And this is being done now at the state level. It's pushed through by legislatures, automatically getting registered to vote. And I mean, I want to talk more about this after the break coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But what I'm concerned about, and I'm seeing this not just in California, but we're seeing this in other states like Washington and Oregon as well, all along the left coast here. It's migrating eastward, and I call it like a primordial ooze, like a primordial Marxist ooze. So I mean, this is really concerning to me, because we're seeing a change not just in the demographics, but also who is being, you know, essentially being allowed to vote. And we know why. And I want to discuss it after the break. We know where this power shift is coming from. Real quickly, where can folks find you, by the way? Where are you on social media?
Yeah, they can go to my website, reaganbabe.com. My latest piece was just published at the Washington Times. They can follow me on Twitter at reaganbabe, as well as on Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect.
So,
all right. Well, we'll be right back. We're going to talk about a lot more here with Megan Barth at Whiskey Politics. And back with you here, Dave Sussman, Whiskey Politics, and we're delighted to have Megan Barth joining us, Reagan Babe. She is all over the radio, and you can find her at reaganbabe.com. You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you is this, obviously, this massive news story of the past couple of weeks, and that is the wall. What we're seeing right now with Donald Trump, who is finally listening to his base, I think. Somebody whispered in his ear a few weeks ago and said, George H.W. Bush, no new taxes, buddy. You better get on this thing. And so what we have just seen in the past few days, and I'd love to hear your impression upon this as far as what Trump is talking about with some kind of negotiation, bringing DACA back into the discussion, and the Democrats basically not even wanting to hear it anymore. There's no discussions. There's no negotiations. What's going on here?
Well, the Democrats didn't do anything about DACA when they had control of both houses, did they? They didn't do anything about illegal immigration. They were talking about a wall. They were talking about illegal immigration. And as a matter of fact, Dickie Durbin out of Illinois, my former home state, which I fled from there too, he wanted a longer wall. But now all of a sudden the talking points of the Democrats that are against any sort of control, it seems, when it comes to our borders, first, the wall wouldn't work. Then the wall was immoral. Now there's not enough money for the wall. Well, that's a really interesting argument, no matter which platform or argument you want to take, is because the last one, walls don't work, then why did we fund walls? Why did they sign an omnibus bill funding walls in Tunisia? Why did the Democrats use taxpayer money to fund walls in Jordan? The Democrats have no problem funding walls all over the world, so that tells me, hell, they must work. But if the wall really doesn't work, or if the wall is immoral, so we know we have money, okay? We have plenty of money. The Democrats can always find money for their pet projects. When you look at, for example, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's talking about tens of trillions of dollars when it comes to her new, better green plan. And then, of course, you have other Marxist Democrats talking about their new, better deal. I guess, the lowest unemployment rate since 1960 isn't a great deal, so they're going to make it better by spending tens of trillions of dollars on, spending to try to get jobs. So they can find money for their pet projects, their social justice initiatives, and their climate change initiatives. They simply can't find money for the wall. So if the wall, is immoral, so we know we have money. If the wall is immoral, then why doesn't Nancy take a few of her illegal alien bros or amigos and go down to San Diego and tear down the wall between San Diego and Tijuana? That wall works really well according to the Tijuana mayor and according to the San Diego mayor and any other Democrat you really ask. They don't have an excuse as to why they aren't tearing down the walls and building walls abroad.
Megan, where is the discussion in the mainstream media regarding 2006 and the Fence Act that Chucky Schumer, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, they all supported, and it won overwhelmingly in the Senate? And George W. Bush, wanted this. They called it a fence. In fact, I think it was actually the fence was part of the name of this bill that passed. Whether we want to call it a fence or slatted steel beams or a wall or whatever it may be, it's about security on the border. Where is the discussion about this hypocrisy?
They don't want, obviously, to have a discussion about anything, and they certainly aren't going to point fingers at themselves and call themselves hypocrites. They would just prefer that we forget the past and look forward. Remember, that's always the progressive chant. We must move forward. So moving forward simply means forgetting all of the past promises and the past commitments and the past bills they had signed. So we have to kind of ask ourselves, okay, so what changed? Why are Democrats all of a sudden rallying behind illegal aliens while turning their backs on American citizens? Why all of a sudden are Americans lacking the protection, but illegal aliens getting Democrats' protection? Well, it really can boil down to a few different things. Number one is power. Now, how did the Democrats gain power from illegal aliens? Well, my latest piece in the Washington Times has to do with the census. Now, the New York Times, that conservative rag that it is, they say specifically that illegal aliens tend to flock to democratically controlled municipalities and states, usually the sanctuary ones. And so this gives Democrats, without the citizenship question on the census, which we haven't asked since 1950, this gives Democrats more bodies. It gives them more control, and more bodies means more representation. And so it's estimated that the Democrats actually have 9 extra electoral college votes because of the amount of illegal immigrants counted in the census. So that's number one. They get power from importing third world migrants. They also then can go around, they also get bigger government, because all of these illegal aliens that are flooding into our cities and our communities are costing American taxpayers, whether it's hikes in taxes that we have to pay, hikes in fees in order to pay for the care and the welfare and the education and the incarceration of illegal aliens. So this gives Democrats not only a new dependent class, but it also gives them the power to grow government. And a bigger government and a fat government makes a happy Democrat. And a dependent person makes a happy Democrat. So it's power, and then, of course, bigger government. And then the third one really is votes. Like I said, and we both were talking at the top of this show, that once illegal aliens get on the DMV rolls, and once the states pass automatic voter registration based on DMV licensees, voila, you've got the fraud baked into the bread. And there is not one state, David, and I learned this from J. Christian Adams, who used to work in the DOJ under Eric Holder. There is not one state that checks for the citizenship of registered voters.
They do not check the citizenship of registered voters. Why? How? I mean, is there a law against that, or?
Well, not necessarily, but what there is there's a lot of privacy issues protecting the Department of Homeland Security's database.
Okay.
That's what the left is always screaming. So when Donald Trump had established that Election Integrity Commission, which J. Christian Adams was a part of, as well as Chris Kobach and others, you saw 27 different lawsuits from primarily left-wing groups and left-wing secretaries of states that said, well, we don't want to share, our information with a national database. That's somehow violating the privacy of people who have no legal right to be here.
Right.
And so we need to really get down to the brass tacks. And we need to say, and we need to overcome the left's talking point that this is somehow a racial issue. Illegal alien is not a race. An illegal is a crime. Being an illegal alien is a crime. This has nothing to do with race, but of course that's the automatic default position of the leftists, of the Marxists, of the Democrats, because they want to shut down the conversation. They don't want to have a conversation. Every Secretary of State knows that they're not checking on the citizenship of registered voters. And so if you can dirty the rolls, if you can do these voter registration drives like we had in Nevada, taco trucks on every corner, okay, that was led by the Culinary Union, they could sign up anybody. And if they end up on the rolls and they end up getting sample ballots, they're technically a registered voter. Now, what the left will say is, yes, but there is a question on the voter registration form that asks if you're a citizen or not. Well, do you think if someone broke the law to get here, they're really concerned about our laws that are already in place when it comes to voting?
Nope, I wouldn't think so. And in the meantime, is there not a factor where they are analyzing how much this is costing? I mean, everybody's complaining on the left. Everybody's all of a sudden a fiscal conservative and talking about $5 billion. How can we afford $5 billion when the actual cost is hundreds, right? It's a couple $100 billion a year covering medical and food and housing and all of these other expenses. Where's the discussion on that?
Well, of course not. No, we can't talk about numbers. The reason why Democrats don't want to talk about numbers is numbers don't lie. Democrats do. And so the last piece of information I had on the national cost to American taxpayers was anywhere between $130 billion and $160 billion.
That's insane.
It is insane.
That's insane.
Well, it is, especially when we have, veterans living on the streets that are homeless.
Yeah.
Living on the streets who are homeless.
I want to get into a little bit more of this. And also, everybody is now up in arms and they've dug into their tribal sides, right and the left. But I want to get your answer to this after our break right now. And that is, where was Paul Ryan and the Republican Congress for the past 2 years? So we're going to be right back with Megan Barth, Reagan Babe, and we are talking illegal immigration here at Whiskey Politics, and we'll be right back on the other side. And welcome back to Whiskey Politics. Delighted to have with us returning Megan Barth. And you can find Megan at ReaganBabe.com and all over radio in Southern Nevada and all over the country. You are interviewed by quite a lot of radio stations, aren't you?
Yeah, I am really all over the country. I have some regular shows, and I love radio. I love podcasting. I love radio, specifically the live radio, because you get to really learn a lot about different areas of the country and who are your listeners and really who is the conservative base, because conservatives drive talk radio. So I'm on in Alabama, and I'm on with the Hagman Report tonight, and I'm also running my own show for 2 hours a day, 10 to noon Pacific time in northern Nevada, and I call Nevada home. I absolutely adore it here.
Yeah, it's a great place to live. Now, when we take a look, and right before the break, we were talking about what's happening with the wall and the discussions and the politics of it. But, there is a question, and I think it's a legitimate question, and that is Donald Trump had both houses of Congress. Paul Ryan, he could have pushed through a bill that Donald Trump would have signed. Where was he? Where were the Republicans? Why are we now dealing with this with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker?
Well, I think Paul Ryan basically took some lessons from John Boehner. The problem with the Republican Party that I've talked about actually for 4 years now is that it's been run by moderates. It's been run by moderates really since Reagan had left the White House. And a moderate Republican really is nothing more than what I would consider an old school Democrat. Paul Ryan was happy to do big government deals with big government Democrats. And when you look at the amount of spending that Paul Ryan oversaw, of course, nothing really went to border security. But when you look at the amount of spending, he and Mitch McConnell have presided over the largest expansion of government in our country's history. These are not Reagan-esque policies. These are conservative Republican policies. And this is, again, moderate Mitt Romney, moderate McCain. Moderate McCain stabbed us in the back. Moderate Mitt Romney, I assume, will stab us in the back, much like he's been stabbing Trump in the back before and after he received Trump's endorsement.
Not to interject, but he did like Trump's speech over the weekend regarding bringing, come to the table.
Well, of course, because it was going to give the Democrats what they wanted, and that was basically to naturalize illegal aliens and their children. Yeah. We have to really draw a line in the sand here and say, are we a nation of laws or aren't we? I don't expect that we are going to deport 25 million people. I think the whole number that the Democrats and Republicans keep throwing around of 11 or 12 million, I've heard that for 15 years. And so we have a greater and bigger problem than I think anyone's willing to admit. And when we look at the numbers, as we were talking about before, anywhere between 130 and 160 billion dollars, we have a serious problem.
Outside of Trump's base, do you think there's an appetite for this fight right now?
I really do, because when there was a piece published just the other day that showed Hispanic approval of Donald Trump jumped double digits since he was, I believe, inaugurated or just within a short period of time. So that tells me that his message is reaching across all demographics. I think what needs to happen here is to have a much stronger push and really expose the costs of illegal immigration. I saw that One American News Network was going to have a clock running, much like the national debt clock. They were going to run a cost clock of illegal immigration, and I think that's an excellent idea. I also think that we need to have a clock when it comes to the number of people murdered each day by illegal aliens. Again, illegal aliens have no right to be here. They have automatically broken our laws when they crossed, and so why are we not following the law and not holding and catching and releasing them? So we give them a piece of paper and we say, go off and disappear into the shadows, and in a couple years come back and see an immigration judge. Our immigration judges have 900,000 cases sitting on their desk. This problem has metastasized to the point where it's nearly out of control. And again, this isn't a question about race, it's a question about law.
Right. And so for our viewers and listeners who, are somewhat casual observers of the news and may not know a lot of this information, the process, let's talk about that. So you get a caravan, let's say you have, I don't know what the number was last year, like 400,000 arrested at the border, something like that, right? They get arrested, but because they are standing on American soil, they can't get pushed back over the border. They're given a court date, correct? And then they're just kind of catch and release, let go into the ether and hope that they come back. Is that about does that cover it, or is there more to it than that?
That's pretty much the nuts and bolts. An example of the last caravan that just illegally tried to penetrate our borders. Some of them did get across. I think there was a couple hundred that did. Many sick children and women and men ended up in our hospitals and our communities. But ICE was forced to drop off 2,000. They did a dump of 2,000 illegal immigrants at undisclosed locations throughout Texas, as well as some other parts of the country. And at least 10 of those illegal aliens of 1,000, I think they did 2,000, but 10 out of 1,000 that they dumped off at these undisclosed locations were pregnant women.
Okay.
So we've got 10 more anchor babies to take care of.
Yeah. Now, people listening to this, they're, especially those that are on the left that have been indoctrinated by the media. And in the next section, I want to talk about what's going on in the media right now. But they'll listen to this and they'll call us a xenophobe. They call us racist. They call us bigoted. I'm an immigrant. I'm a legal immigrant. Okay. And for those that have been following the show for a while, they know that I was originally born in England. I came here. I was naturalized after 12 years and I did it the right way. I was able to work with a green card. I have no issue with immigration. I have zero. I welcome it, right? And I think you do too. And most people do when we talk about immigration. But this is a big difference here. And going back to what you were just talking about here, and it's about conveying this message and bringing people into the fold to get a better understanding regarding the financial and the cultural impact of all of this. Outside of One America News and maybe podcasts and shows like this, and where can people hear about this? Because we certainly don't hear about it in the media.
Well, no, I mean, the thing that we hear in the media is that if you question the amount of immigration, you're automatically deemed a racist. I mean, that's really the talking point.
Right.
Because all the media is simply just cheerleaders for the Democrat Party. Whatever the talking point whatever the talking point of the Democrats is turned into a headline and then sensationalized nightly on the news or daily in the papers. And all we have is really political pundits. We don't have journalists. We don't have journalists that are going to ask these tough questions. And I love the left's argument about how somehow this is a racial issue. Again, I've said it 3 times. Illegal alien is not a race, it's a crime. And we are talking about people that are willingly, knowingly, and being encouraged to break our laws.
I had this discussion with my kids yesterday. My oldest son is, 18 and a half years old. And, they get the news from the teachers and, quite frankly, local news, which mostly repeats what the New York Times repeats. And so they were surprised with some of these issues that we're talking about right here that I raised as well. And I asked them a question point blank. And that is, if I wanted to move to Canada, and I've got a friend, we're going to be interviewing him next week. He's a big producer in Hollywood. And he tried to move to Canada. They wouldn't let him in. If I wanted to move to Australia, they wouldn't let you in. It's a meritocracy immigration-based system. What the heck are we doing in America? And the discussion of meritocracy, again, is racism. Where is the common sense here?
Well, I think the Democrats want to rewrite history and then create their own future. And when you promise to fundamentally transform this country, which Barack Obama did in 2009, you have to ask yourself, do you really love something you want to fundamentally transform? I mean, David, would you go up to your fiance and say, I love you, baby, here's a ring, but I need to fundamentally transform you? So the Democrats want to create, well, first of all, they want to tear down the capitalist system. And that is a Cloward Piven model. So when we see these caravans coming, invading our southern border, waving the Honduran flag, for example, I call them the Cloward Piven caravans. And in order to understand the left, you must understand that a Cloward Piven, which is the overthrow of capitalism through the creation of a consistent and constant crises that will then break the system. And so how best to usher in socialism? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, let's just call her Sandy, because that's what she went by in high school in Yorktown. She's not Alexandria from the Bronx.
You mean she didn't grow up in the Bronx?
No, she grew up in Yorktown with a silver spoon in her mouth, went to, I think, boarding school. So let's just call her Sandy from Yorktown. So Sandy the socialist from Yorktown wants to make sure that capitalism is overthrown, and how best to do it but import non-English speaking third world migrants. You not only
Yeah.
change the system, but you also change the demographics and the culture.
Let's talk more about it after this last break coming up, and I want to get into the media and some of the other issues that are going on right now with Megan Barth. We'll be right back. Whiskey Politics. And Dave Sussman back with you at Whiskey Politics. And if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube Whiskey Politics channel, please do so and hit the notification bell. You can also find us at ricochet.com, America's Voice News, which you can find on Roku, Apple Play, and Amazon Fire, and all of your podcast applications. We're back with Megan Barth, and we're just talking about the immigration debate, if you want to call it that. It's more like a fight and a war. But, you know, one of the biggest problems that I see happening right now with this discussion is what is being reported and what isn't being reported in the media. Now, this is a much larger discussion, maybe for another time as well, but we just came off of a weekend where the mainstream media, starting with BuzzFeed, I can't believe they're considered mainstream these days, and then the following day, we had a situation where you had the Covington high school student that was reported all across every media outlet. Many of them are now changing their story. But, you know, what are we seeing right now with the media? This is just disgusting, isn't it?
Well, it is disgusting. And instead of reporting the truth, like I said, all they are political pundits, that if you go against the narrative, you are somehow labeled a racist. If you are a white man, you are a threat. If you are a Christian, you are a threat. If you are a Trump supporter, you are a threat to their power. And so what they need to do is completely malign you and use their international platform along with celebrities in Hollywood and their millions of followers to make sure that the resistance to the resistance is maligned. What they did to innocent children in Kentucky, the Covington students, I hope they are sued into bankruptcy. They carried on a narrative that was no less than libel legally, and they should be held to account. You know, Mark Twain actually got his start as a reporter in northern Nevada, and it was said by him, and it's one of my favorite quotes, a lie will travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. And the media knows this, because if they retract something, you know, 48 hours later or do a mea culpa, no one's paying attention because the retraction might be a simple blip on a radar or on page 30 of the New York Times. They aren't going to take a front page article and say that they were completely wrong. They aren't going to lead. Jake Tapper isn't going to make it the lead that CNN got this story wrong when it came to the Covington Catholic boys. The narrative is important. It's all that matters to the media. They are nothing but mouthpieces for the Democrat Party. They align with the Democrat Party, a majority. And when you look at their reporting, 90% of their coverage of President Trump is negative, yet Donald Trump's successes are historic when it comes to our economy. So it's evident that the media is working against the American people. And the fake news media, as Trump says, is the enemy of the people, because simply all they are supposed to do is report the truth and let people decide their opinion based on facts, not make up a story, not participate in yellow journalism, not dox young kids, and then run a video, David. I could honestly not believe this. I don't consider myself a journalist. I investigate, I write, I report. I'm on the radio. Fine. But I'm watching this video and I go, where's the sound? Where is the sound? We have, I'm sure we have dozens of camera phones. Are we not just going to sit back and wait to see perhaps what these students were saying, if anything, to this Native American? No. The media ran it without sound, I believe on purpose, in order to misconstrue the facts, create a whole entire narrative of racist white Catholic boys in MAGA hats assaulted an American Indian veteran.
No, it's extremely frustrating. And when I take a look at this, you know, it comes back to what we were saying earlier in this discussion point, and that is, how do we get that message out when you're fighting these massive behemoths that are not just the New York Times or the Washington Post, but also social media today? And if you go on Twitter, and I know a lot of our viewers and listeners do go on Twitter just to check it out for news, but the fact is that it isn't just the left. this is my concern with all of this. It wasn't just the left that jumped on this high school kid, Covington High School. It wasn't just the left that jumped on the Mueller report, quote unquote, or the BuzzFeed report that Mueller squashed within 24 hours. It was the right and many institutions on the right, many of whom I've got friends there who work at different places. And, you know, they're more institutional right-wing publications.
The Bill Kristols of the world, the Never Trumpers of the world.
It's not even going as far as Never Trumper. I expect that from Kristol. I expect that from some of those other folks. But a lot of folks that I would think that would want to take a moment and breathe and realize that the media lies. And if we give this thing 24 hours or 48 hours, we're going to know more. But instead, they jump on this thing. And you have folks like at the National Review who publish this thing about the Covington High School students and the MAGA hat wearing, KKK looking, and they didn't say this, but a lot of people did. And they just basically joined this mob. And so if we're not even getting conservative, quote unquote, conservative media saying, hold on a minute, we know how the media is, then what chance do we stand at getting this message out? Because as you said, any correction is on page 33B.
Well, this reminds me, this story is a little bit more vicious because it was targeting children and the bullying and the doxing and the narrative was created against children. But I remember perhaps talking to you back in the Michelle Fields incident. You remember the Michelle Fields? Interesting. Yeah, she wrote an article like Journalism in the Age of the Body Slam, I think was her title. And Michelle Fields was supposedly on the right, and she was saying how Corey Lewandowski slammed her to the ground. And immediately, and I'm thinking, wow, well, if that's true, that's awful. He should be fired, right? And I'm thinking, well, there are camera phones. People are taking videos. I'm sure something will come out and either exonerate Corey Lewandowski or validate Michelle Fields. But before we could wait for the validation, we had Dana Lash, we had Katie Pavlik, we had other women in the right movement, if you will, the conservative movement, that came out and demanded his resignation, demanded that he be fired by Trump. And I'm like, wait a minute, what happened to due process here? What happened about maybe not taking someone's word for it? Okay, that's why, and Kavanaugh is a good example. You know, we're taking anyone's word for it. No, we are a due process society for a reason. People actually do lie. Michelle Fields was caught in a lie.
Right, right.
And so, you know, I think that instead of being first to the story, maybe these people on the right that you know within a variety of publications, maybe they should be first with the truth.
You would think so. And this is the problem that we have today, is that social media is all about clicks. It's all about the first one out gets the massive number of views. That leads to advertising dollars. And it's all about just that. Let's be honest about it. It's all about getting ad revenue. And if you're the first one, everybody's going to go to your page. This is the biggest problem that I see. Okay, I want to shift to another issue here because we've got a few minutes left, and I want to get your opinion. I know you've been very outspoken about this issue going on as long as I've known you now, which is a few years, and that is this toxic masculinity. Okay, we just had the stupid Gillette commercial that came out last week. Okay, and I know a lot of people have talked about it and they're being lambasted in the media, but this is a sign of something much, much bigger than Gillette. And tell me if I'm wrong here on this, and I want to get your opinion on this, but I think that the Oberlin gender studies students are finally now, they are now growing in corporate America, and it's over. They're now in the boardrooms, and they're using social justice as a corporate plan, and this is not the last we're going to be hearing about it. It's only going to get worse. What say you?
Yeah, social justice is another just euphemistic term for cultural Marxism. What about toxic femininity? I look at the feminist movement and I'm appalled. I was actually appalled that the feminists were appalled by the P word when Trump used it, because they were knitting peas and putting them on their hats, and they're always talking about their peas, and they're showing their peas, and you know, they are just proud with their peas. Yeah. And they're also proud about being using their peas at their will at any time with any guy they want. I mean, Chelsea Handler was describing about how she was getting, you know, sex with many different men, and she was happily single because she was free and liberated to sleep with whoever she wanted. That is toxic femininity to me. Toxic masculinity is simply just being a man. If you are a man, according to the left, you are automatically toxic. What the left is really interesting, what's interesting about the left is they claim to be the party of science until it comes to gender and until it comes to conception. Then science is completely thrown out the window. And so again, we have to understand the left for who they are. And when they control the narrative, like they do in the media, they control the people. When they control the boardrooms, they are going to control the marketing. And what Gillette did was really shoot itself in the foot. And quite frankly, I think we need more masculine men and less men that are in man buns, capri pants, and male feminists.
Here's what worries me about this, because I'm in total agreement with you. And, I'm not Joe, G.I. Joe or anything, but I climb mountains. I like poker. I, have a good cigar with my buddies and drink a whiskey and watch football. I'm a guy. All right. But I'm not toxic. I'm chivalrous, and I try to be polite and open a door when I can, right? And just treat people the way, quite frankly, I want to be treated. I think it's just common sense. But here's my problem with this. We saw this thing with Nike and the Kaepernick thing, right? Last year. And there was outrage about it. And everybody was like, we're going to boycott Nike. Well, it turns out within a few weeks, Nike was making a ton of money on this. So are we in our own echo chamber on this? That's what's concerning to me here.
Yes and no, but Andrew Breitbart always said that politics is downstream from culture, and the rot that is coming out of Hollywood right now is a very anti-American platform. It's a very social justice platform. When you look at any movie really produced, there is a subliminal message of basically, social justice messages can be subliminal or they can be very outward. When you demonize an entire class or sex of people, that is going to take effect if you keep that demonization going, if you keep pushing the demonization that men are toxic or white people are institutionally or genetically racist. We hear the term institutional racism thrown around. Yet we aren't looking at the very anti-Semitism that is growing within the Democrat Party. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They won't even distance themselves from Louis Farrakhan.
Right.
And so you've got kind of a multi-headed hydra, if you will, when it comes to the left. When you chop off one head, another one will grow. And so with Hollywood against this country really producing kind of anti-American films, when you have actors and actresses acting in an anti-American fashion, what happened to the actors like John Wayne that actually went to war for this country, that loved
It's funny you say that. I'm on a binge right now. I'm watching all of the 1930s John Wayne black and whites that have been colorized on Amazon. It's just so much fun. But anyway, I'm sorry. I just had to say that.
So yeah, I mean, one of Andrew Breitbart's main goals was not only to tear down the mainstream media, but also to influence the culture through politics. Yeah. And I think actually that there are more and more conservatives that are getting louder within the entertainment industry, but they're blackballed. And so many of us are underground. Many conservative activists are underground, specifically within Hollywood. Some have come out as far as in the public, not worrying about the backlash from their Hollywood producers, etc. But when you have the mainstream media and Hollywood against you, you are absolutely right. It is certainly hard to get out the message. And then, of course, let's not forget the indoctrination centers, which are called schools across this country. And millennials, Generation Z, as they're called, are the most progressive or liberal generation that we've seen in a long time.
You're still saying progressive. I love that. Yeah, it is really concerning. And I'm so progressive. They're so progressive. Yes. It's a concern. And it's
a very important tool against
and Generation X have to pay for it, by the way, at the most expensive time of college tuition ever. Thank you very much. It's all crazy. All right. Well, listen, I greatly appreciate you taking the time. This is fantastic. And this is one of those discussions we could have for hours on this. And I'm sure we will. We're going to see you at CPAC, right?
Yes, you are. I can't wait.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Again, remind folks where they can find you. What's that?
This will be my 10th CPAC.
10th. Wow.
The keynote speaker at my first CPAC, it was in 2009, was Rush Limbaugh. Bring back Rush and some activism at CPAC. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think it's Candace Owens this year. Yeah, I think it's Candace Owens this year.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
She's great.
We need strong conservative millennial voices, and we also need strong conservative millennial and older activists.
Yes, we do.
We need to maintain activity and vigilance.
Great.
People can find me, ReaganBabe.com, at ReaganBabe on Twitter, at ReaganBabe on Facebook.
And you can find us at whiskeypolitics.net, ricochet.com. Just look for Whiskey Politics on YouTube, and of course, America's Voice News and all of your podcast applications. Very special thanks again to Megan Barth, Reagan Babe. Always a pleasure, and we'll be back again real soon at Whiskey Politics.